Dr. Michael Burry. I made a few videos about his big positions in a number of different sectors, most notably his big bet on US treasuries and tech. But this video focuses on a somewhat unknown bet that everybody seems to be ignoring, one that has already paid off due to some extreme circumstances in the world economy. You have probably already heard by now that everything from houses to cheese seems to be spiking in price, but one thing that doesn't get enough attention because on the surface it's a bit boring is shipping. US consumers, whether they like it or not, get most of their products from overseas, specifically China, and most of those things come across on big boats that historically have charged cheap rates, leading to cheap supply chains, which obviously led to cheap prices here in the US states. But recently, in the post-pandemic world, freight rates have been rising exponentially. The spot price per container on the China-U.S. East Coast route, one of the most busiest in the world, has climbed to over 500% from a year ago to $20,804. This type of price action is likely going to shake up distributors and retailers here in the States, who will undoubtedly pass the price along to consumers, leading to just another category where inflation is slowly and silently eating up the American middle class. While many will use the transitory argument suggesting that this price increase is temporary, it's unlikely that prices will go down anytime soon. Here in a CNA report, many are claiming that large manufacturers and companies within the US have already signed 12-month contracts, locking in some of these high rates. This would suggest that most are betting prices continue to inflate, and that now $20,000 could soar much higher. Take a listen for yourself.
Higher shipping costs could be here to stay. It's during this time of the year that large retailers and manufacturers sign deals with carriers to lock in freight rates for the next 12 months. Now, over the past few months, container prices from China to the US or European ports have hovered near record highs, and they could increase further. The higher shipping costs have been sparked by factors including soaring demand amid stimulus checks and saturated ports. The recent Suez Canal blockage also worsened the situation. How will this affect consumers and trade in Asia? Well, Philip Darmasat, Drury Group, joins us live from London. Philip, how much higher are the contract prices for containers, and could they rise further?
We will get back to Philip, but before we hear his thoughts, let's go back to the reason you clicked on this video. Dr. Michael Burry. According to his 13F, Burry has been adding over $9 million in shipping shares. The recent filing shows Burry purchased 354,000 of Genco Shipping and Trading Limited, 190,000 shares of Scorpio Tankers, and 530,000 shares of Golden Ocean Group for about $3.5 million each. All marked his first entry into those stocks. This was back in Q1, so we don't know the exact dates of when he purchased, but just looking over the charts, you can see that this bet has paid off handsomely. For Genco, if we assume he bought in March, you can see that the returns have been around 60%. For Golden Ocean Group or GOGL, the same type of price action is seen, and if we assume the same, it can be said that Scion is likely up around 40% from this position. Finally, Scorpio Tankers, which at one point was up 40%, has actually taken a plummet and fallen back down to March levels, suggesting that he's likely even on this position despite the massive drop. We also don't know until the next 13F is released whether or not Burry added to any of these positions or if he sold earlier than what we thought. But regardless, it's very clear that Burry was predicting this earlier this year, and analyzing the next 13F should give us great insight into what is coming for the latter half of 2021. And while it's fascinating to look into and analyze the mind of a man who's famous for predicting market outcomes such as this one, that doesn't take away from the fact that while he's making money, we the consumers are likely taking a fall. While companies around America are hesitant to publicly state that they're raising prices, more and more are left with no choice. Take for an example Procter & Gamble. They are a massive company that makes everything from shampoo to soap. There is a very good chance you have one of their products in your home right now as you watch this video. Recently, their CEO went on CNBC to explain why margins were going to be lower for 2022. And of course, one of the reasons he stated was these crazy freight rates. But if you pay attention, just look at the way he explains that all is okay because they're simply going to raise their prices and pass this extra cost onto the consumer.
So for fiscal 22, you're talking about higher commodity and freight costs adding a headwind of $1.9 billion.
That's correct, yes. And I think that's everybody's seeing that right now. And the key will be how you deal with it. And while we're facing tough comps and higher costs going into the year. The momentum is very strong, and we have the tools to deal with it, though. We have good momentum on our brands. We have, where appropriate, the ability to take price. We have a very strong productivity program. And probably most important, we have superior innovation across all our categories.
He sounds like Jay Powell when he talks about inflation, saying, quote, "We have the tools to deal with it." And when you ask yourself what those tools could be, he simply says, "We have, where appropriate, the ability to take price." That is just a very fancy way of saying, we'll raise the prices and you'll deal with it. This ignores the fact that wages are not keeping up, and on top of this, the Fed reports a highly manipulated CPI number that fails to capture many of the recent price hikes that the typical American family is facing. Thank you guys for watching. As always, please make sure you hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed, and if you're thinking about diversifying some of your net worth into crypto, please consider using my affiliate link for BlockFi below. I've been using the service for almost 3 months now and have earned some pretty serious interest on top of some crypto gains.